This week marks 3 months since the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, Rocksteady's first major release for what was a period of 9 years since Arkham Knight. A very different game and project from their Arkham trilogy. At this point, you know what this game is, you know how it reviewed, you've heard the stories. I wanted to tackle this through a different lens. If you're someone who hasn't played yet, but has a mild interest still, should you now jump into the game? If you're someone who did play at launch, but then dipped, is it worth coming back? And if you're someone, like me, who played at launch, played Season 1, how's it been for the ongoing player? I'll answer all of those, but before I get stuck in, you know me by now, if you're looking to stay up to date on Suicide Squad, we are weeks away now from the release of Episode 2. I'll be here with guides, builds, and impressions, so consider subscribing, I would love you to. With that said, let's dolphin dive right in, shall we? It's always important for me to start this video with context so that you can form your opinion. I like Suicide Squad, and I play my fair share of looter shooters. It's an ongoing struggle though, because just because I like it does not mean I can't see issues in it. It's not blind faith, but I'm also of the mind that pure rage baiting is just proper boring, man, innit? There's a lot the game got wrong, but it's important to not hyper focus on that because there's also the stuff that it got right and is now getting right. So, let's catch you up. What has this game had since its launch? Well, we obviously had the base campaign of around 8 to 10 hours, tackling the Justice League, bringing them down one by one, which resulted in a showdown with Brainiac. That culminated in the beginning of its live service plans. Look, I'm going to be going into some story spoilers here because admittedly, I don't think they're avoidable when I'm talking about the live service model of this game. And truth be told, even if you haven't played, I don't think it's going to take much of your enjoyment away. We take out an Elseworld Brainiac to then discover there's 13 Brainiacs that we need to take out, thus beginning our live service journey of this game. After the main campaign roll credits, we had Season 0, which is Finite Crisis, giving us a Bane Infamy loot set, multiple notorious weapons, and a few endgame activities. The end of March saw the release of Season 1, giving us the Joker as a new playable character, an Elseworlds Joker, mind you, not the original Arkham Joker, a new Brainiac boss fight, more Infamy and Notorious loot sets, Elseworld Joker themed incursions, and a few extra Riddler challenges and trophies. We're now weeks away from the release of Episode 2, which right now is slated to give us a new Brainiac boss fight, new enemy types focused on the Green Lantern, new Infamy and Notorious loot sets, and an ever-changing Metropolis, whatever that means anyway. Seasons are comprised of 2 episodes, to release every 6 weeks. That's where we're at with Suicide Squad. Story-wise, each Brainiac seems to be based on a League member that we fought. So, for example, it was a Flash Brainiac in the base game, Green Lantern-based Brainiac in Episode 1, and it looks like we're going to get a Superman Brainiac to fight in Episode 2. I think we can still go interesting places with this story. I won't accept the idea that the League is permanently gone, and I think Rocksteady have teased enough in that main campaign to leave the doors open with its storytelling. So what's the actual state of the game? I think I want to break this down into 3 aspects: the endgame, seasons, and the technical state. Let's start with the latter. At launch, players who bought the game may have been locked out of it for up to a month. That, paired with the fact that if you were playing in a multiplayer party of more than 2 players, it would just likely capitulate after like 30 minutes of playing, with bugs and technical issues all over the shop. I'm happy to say that on the technical side, things are in good stead right now. Multiplayer works a lot better, those login errors, as far as I'm aware anyway, are 99% gone, server stability has been great. The only slight is PC performance may need a touch of work. It seems that Season 1 degraded performance by a small margin, so for those lower mid-spec rigs, it's going to do a bit of damage to your performance. I will say, I've always been largely impressed with how cross-play, cross-save, leaderboards, clans, all of that has just worked flawlessly since launch. I think if the technical aspect was what stopped you from playing, I would give the green light on it now. The 2 major pillars though of any successful live service game is its seasons and endgame content. The endgame content last week saw a huge step in the right direction. addressing key community complaints, big ones that I had myself. The endgame itself functions around the idea and the concept of mastery levels. Run these incursions which take you to another Elseworld in Metropolis, complete the mission, get some infamy and notorious loot focused around DC characters, and then unlock the next mastery level, rinse and repeat. In Season 1, there were 6 incursion missions, though you only have to cycle through 3 of them to keep progressing, which does give some degree of player choice. There's a dedicated video in the description that I made a while back for how the endgame works as a loop, if you want to have more detail on that. As you went higher throughout the mastery levels, and from Mastery 23, you'd gain access to Tier 3 of that episode's infamy loot, which always had a Tier 1, a Tier 2, and Tier 3, each granting different buffs. So for Episode 1 it was Scarecrow, for Episode 0 it was Bane. Now, last week's dev update saw some great changes. Again, after I've recapped it here, there's a dedicated video linked in the description down below going over it more thoroughly. One change is that we're finally inclined to rerun the boss fights of the season. Rocksteady are adding what they're calling corrupted loot sets to these boss fights, so whatever the notorious loot is for that season will now have a corrupted version, giving it more buffs and features to make it worthwhile and distinct. They're also changing how master weapons worked, so before a master weapon would be an enhanced version of the normal weapon, usually just doubling the damage. Now you'll have a normal version of a weapon and 5 master versions of it, all increasing the damage output of said weapon the higher your master version is. The higher the mastery level you go, the more access should be granted to these higher master versions. The other big change is as you went through the mastery levels, there will be what they call mutators. These will be added to your missions. Mutators acted as debuffs, modifiers to make the level more challenging. For the most part, these sucked, like really sucked, because they narrowed down the build crafting potential, so you'd be forced to use basically a specific affliction build, like burn, and it just wasn't very fun. Now, they're turning these modifiers into buffs in the aim of making more builds viable in the endgame content. These are all changes coming with episode 2, so we can't say how successful they've been, but on paper, as someone who's played since launch, these are really good changes. However, Suicide Squad has a huge endgame problem. Running these incursions, no matter the objective, whether that be defending Ivy's plants, killing infused enemies, blowing up a tower, it all just feels the same. The problem is, this entire endgame is focused around essentially leaderboards and climbing the mastery levels. Now, sure, there's going to be Master 5 items to go and chase, and there's new boss loot that we've all been asking for. But what am I getting myself a build for, other than to say, hey, I hit mastery level 100, look at me? I don't find that compelling. There's no dungeon or raid-like activities. The problem with boss fights is that often your most powerful attacks, your grenades, suicide strikes which act as finishers, and traversal attacks, are largely not usable against bosses, so then boss fights feel like a proper slog. Elseworlds as an idea is really cool, honestly. The Joker Elseworlds from a visual and design perspective is immaculate, and as a big DC fan, I love being in it. Right now I enjoy build crafting, sure, but when it's the same activities over and over, it just gets quite monotonous and boring. The endgame lacks real depth, but the build crafting doesn't. I say in every video, right? I am fully aware that Destiny is to a degree just doing the same thing over and over and over. But the trick is, it rarely ever makes you feel like that between the different activities. There's nothing here that really encourages cooperative play, and for a cooperative shooter, that's a huge miss. That brings us to seasons then. Each season, like I said, is comprised of 2 episodes, one every 6 weeks. I say, fair dues to Rocksteady. There's no FOMO, no expiring battle passes, no expiring seasonal content, all there to play when you want to play. But, the seasonal model does not work for me. All the content for each episode is dumped on day 1, and if episode 1 is anything to go by, we're talking about 10 minutes of narrative and storytelling, and then you're just back to that same old incursion loop over and over and over again. I mentioned before, the door is open for future storytelling, but if this episode is indicative of future seasons, fans of the narrative will feel so let down. These seasons function more like Diablo seasons, new gear to mess around with that will synergize particularly well in that episode, and then each episode is about a new build to work around, and new items introduced, and largely making those older ones a bit more redundant. Whilst again, as a big DC fan, the loot design and models and gameplay here are 10 out of 10. Seriously, it continues to be one of my favourite parts of the game. But by Season 4, if we carry on with the current trend, we're looking at maybe 2 hours of narrative? Which just sounds crazy to me for an Arkhamverse title. And that's where I feel this game can be at times, stuck between a rock and a hard place, wanting to have the production and narrative of this Batman Arkham trilogy, but then trying to sustain itself as a live service game. Battle Pass progression is just so slow, even with the buffs that you can obtain and the care packages and contracts that give you extra. Look, in fairness, it's a very player first approach. Here's all the content, go have fun, take it at your own pace, no FOMO. But for them, Rocksteady, DC, Warner Brothers, it's not good because every season you're going to see a week 1 spike and then for the next 5 weeks just dwindle in numbers because there's no real reason to carry on playing. No weekly story beats, no weekly attuned loot or rewards, just here's a battle pass to grind, incursion missions to run, and loot to obtain. It should be noted, all this content is free with a capital F. The only monetization is season passes and cosmetics, but while some of these have been cool, they're extremely niche and there's not much. For a game solely monetizing its game through cosmetics, I've been shocked at how niche the cosmetics are, but how drip fed they've been. I haven't bought anything in this shop yet, because nothing's been presented to me that's better than the original outfits that I got with my pre-order of the deluxe edition. And if me, someone who has spent a ton in the Eververse in Destiny, or when Avengers was around, bought cosmetics on multiple platforms, isn't buying cosmetics here, that is not a good sign. Let me tell you that. So, where are we at then? Here's the thing. I enjoy Suicide Squad's build crafting. Mucking about with a critical hit Deadshot, a Harley Quinn grenade build, a Joker rain down from the skies traversal build. I do think the build crafting is a lot of fun. But the endgame content is so bare bones, it requires almost an entirely new foundation. These loot changes are great, top notch stuff, honestly. But they're not enough to reinvigorate lapsed players or encourage new ones, because it's still the same thing over and over. The visuals, the animations, the production design, the character work, it is pure Rocksteady DNA. I don't think anyone can doubt that. It looks great, traversal is so smooth, the Joker as the first extra playable character is a lot of fun, and that seems like it's only going to get better with a Freeze character on the way, and then Season 4 looks to be Deathstroke. I thought with the combat, what they did by granting buffs by increasing your combo was a neat idea for the looter shooter. And with mutators no longer making this a problem, I think it's going to enhance combat even more so. I know there's still problems in the combat in terms of an abundance of snipers locking onto you, boss damage feeling minuscule and frustrating, and beams that just shoot through buildings. But gunplay feels good alongside its DC inspired loot, that I enjoy the overall gameplay loop. Could the characters feel a little more diverse and different outside of their traversal? It would help for sure, the shooting the same guns and grenades, but traversal attacks and playstyles do help each character feel distinct in how you want to play as them. At the start, I said I'll answer 3 questions. If you haven't played this game, should you pick it up on sale? If you did play at launch, should you come back? And if you have kept up, has it been worth it? My real take is this. For those first 2 questions, the answers are largely the same. If you're coming to Suicide Squad for its narrative, you want to see what happens to the Justice League, how we take on Brainiac, and how this arc ends. Right now, I can't really say in good faith it's worth jumping back in. I've seen a few who came to the game for that alone, but then stayed for its gameplay and loot, which I love seeing. But if you're here for a narrative alone, I think it's best to wait for the 4 seasons to conclude and likely get a complete package and playthrough of this story. On the flip side, if you played Marvel's Avengers, you play Diablo, you enjoy a bit of min-maxing, you're intrigued by the idea of DC-inspired loot and build crafting, I think yeah, there's now a good chunk to play, a main story, Season 0 with the Bane gear, Season 1 with Scarecrow and soon to be Two-Face Infamy sets, and then tons of notorious loot items like Polka Dot Man grenades, Two-Face, Mad Hatter. There's a lot to love about the DC loot, and with the changes coming in Season 1 Episode 2, I think the build crafting is only going to go up another level. As for question number 3, a player like me who's kept up. Look, I will say this, the approach of this game is great in the idea that it still gives me time to play a Destiny 2 and to play other games. I actually like that. I don't want one game to consume my entire life. But I need a more substantial and fulfilling endgame. I need an activity that really encourages and rewards cooperative play, that gives me an incentive to create really strong and powerful builds and experiment with these characters. I need more from the narrative. This is the bloody Arkhamverse. Some of the best comic book storytelling in video games with some of the most renowned characters in comic books, period. 10 minutes an episode, it will not suffice. Like I said at the top of the video, I like Suicide Squad. I enjoyed the main campaign. I think it plays extremely well. It looks the part in its presentation, and I'm excited to see where the story goes and if the League does come back. But it's lacking in a key compartment, in that it's a faltering live service. Yes, I know there'll be more console players than PC, for sure, 1000% I'm with you. But, enough to warrant long-term support? Absolutely not. I don't care what you say, a Steam game in the low 200s right now is a struggling game. And I don't like seeing that. I don't benefit from saying that, I don't benefit from seeing that, it fucking sucks. I wanted this game to be a huge hit. And if we've seen anything, never rule anything out when it comes to video games. I mean, look at Fallout 76's numbers in these last few weeks. We'll just have to wait and see. All I can hope for is that this Brainiac arc is seen out, and we get a conclusion for where this story is heading to. Plus, if that is Deathstroke in Season 4, I cannot fathom being teased with him and never getting to play as him. Suicide Squad 3 months later is a step in the right direction, but it's still a mile behind where it needs to be. That's Suicide Squad 3 months later. How I feel, where it can improve, where it has improved. But now I want to talk with you in the comments down below. Where are you at with this game? Has this video done anything for you if you hadn't picked it up already? If you have picked it up, what would you like to see down the line? Is there anything you're excited for to come to the game? If you're like me, if you're holding on, what's making you keep playing? What's making you keep coming back? What are your favourite parts about this game? Let's talk in the comments. All I ask is that you keep it civil. Dropping a like on the video is the best way to show me some support. I will always appreciate it, so thank you. Like I say, Suicide Squad Episode 2 is on the horizon. I'll be holding on to this game for the foreseeable future, so if you're looking to stay up to date, I've got you covered, so please do consider subscribing. I really do hope that you have a terrific day, and I'll catch you in the next one.